Hey guys, this is Jared Kraust, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast, and this episode is number 3 with Mr. Charley Valher from Outsourcing Angels. And in this episode, we're talking about website due diligence stories you need to know. So if you guys are looking to go away and make money online or, invest in anything, we talk about some very powerful stories where we almost lost a whole lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some other stories where we've become very, very successful as well, up into making the 7-figure mark. So if you guys are very interested in buying online businesses, making money online and investing, this episode is certainly for you. Hey guys, and welcome to the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And today we'll be talking about website due diligence stories you need to know. And I have a great feeling that there's going to be some pretty funny stories and maybe even some sad stories, hopefully no tears. But I'll be speaking with Mr. Charley Valher from Outsourcing Angels. So Charley, how you doing, mate?
Doing really well, Jared. Thank you for having me on for this episode. I feel like it's like, all right, kiddies, gather around the campfire. Got some stories to share here.
We definitely do. And I know you have a bit of a story from the weekend after seeing one of your posts. And so Charley, I have been investing in online business for many years now, and I know that you've been in online businesses for quite a while. And how about you start telling me a little bit about, your journey moving into this space of buying businesses, and maybe like a story, and then I'll add a story, and then we'll just swap some stories, campfire style, and we'll go from there. How does that sound?
Sounds amazing. I'm literally going, I hope that people will, I just hope I have enough disk drive storage to record all of this episode. This could go for days. No, I'm kidding.
We won't do that to them. Maybe we can record part 1 now and then maybe part 2 another time if we need to.
All right, well, I'll break it down. Is like many years ago, I read a book by a guy called Brad Sugars called Billionaire in Training. Now, this book, it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. But basically what Brad teaches in this book is the idea of buying an existing business and then getting someone else to run it. And then that's the model he uses to, effectively buy a business, scale it up, and then they either keep it for cash flow or then sell it for a profit. Now, it was kind of the first time I'd heard of this idea. This is many years ago. And I fell in love. This is love at true sight. So what is it? It's love at first sight. Instant synergy with this idea and beliefs, because I'd already built up one business to work without me. So at this point, Outsourcing Angel was already a separate entity to me. We had, all the team in place. It wasn't taking up a huge amount of my time. Now, Brad made a suggestion in the book is that for your first business that you buy, pick something simple that you understand and learn from there, and then keep, evaluating and going into bigger deals. Sounds like pretty good advice, eh, Jared?
Great advice. That's what I recommend.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of logic in this. At the time, I was very into yoga.
Yep.
I've got to clear my throat for this one. We're going to need it.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so I was very into yoga, and I was like, sweet, the first business I'm going to buy is a yoga studio. I'm into yoga. I understand the business model. It's group fitness classes, essentially. I thought this is something that's not going anywhere. I think yoga is going to be around for a very long time. It already has been around for a very long time. And I felt that with the skill set I had in digital marketing, that if I was to buy a yoga studio, really, I had the front end covered. That wasn't going to be an issue for me. Filling up classes was going to be the easy part. And then it just seemed like a home run. It seemed like an absolute home run. Are you thinking right now, Charley, this sounds like a home run. Let's go buy a yoga studio.
Well, we're very similar, and I used to do a lot of yoga as well. And we may be biased in this opinion, but I dare say you knew a lot of people that did yoga, like you said. Home run, because you've got so many people that you can fill a class with. Why would you not go for it? Yeah,
exactly. And I'm like, I'm going to kill this. And I just laugh at the ego on me. I'm thinking back to this because, when you've been successful once, that just guarantees future success, if anyone wasn't aware. You're invincible after that point. Okay, so I went down to a broker So I found a few brokers in my area, and I used a few like online resources to find yoga studios for sale. And I thought to myself, well, what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to get like the books on like 5 to 10 yoga studios, do a bit of a comparison, and then I'll make a decision on which one I'm going to buy, and then I'll purchase it. Like this just seems easy. So I went about it, went to a few different brokers, got the books on all these different yoga studios, and I started getting into these books. And then, oh my God. This was like, I actually couldn't believe what was going on. This is one of the most eye-opening experiences I've ever had in business. Now, my wife is actually an accountant. So I've been very, very fortunate in business that I've always had someone in my house to literally go to and be able to help me with financial due diligence. And over the years, I've become like, this is a strength area for me, is I'm very good with the financials of a business. So when I started looking at these books, and you got to remember, I had like 10 different books at this stage of different yoga studios, something became very, very, very apparent to me. These businesses had a lot of funny business going on. Things weren't being recorded truthfully, and the way they were presenting information was very much stacked to make the businesses look a lot better than they were.
All four businesses.
Like, as I said, I had the books for 10, and I reckon, I'll say, roughly 10. I can't remember the exact number, but we'll say I had 10. And there was only one I looked at that had truthful representation of the numbers and the information they were presenting. And the one that did have, correct numbers was like, it was doing so poorly I wouldn't have bought it anyway. And what I discovered really, really quickly in this space is just like how much is up for interpretation and like how good you have to be at due diligence to successfully execute a deal. And I'll give you an example. One of the businesses, right, the way they were presenting like their information and stuff is in the amount of members, because this was a membership model yoga studio, they were including all the members that were on pause in their members numbers. So they didn't classify them as cancelled members. So on the surface, you could look at this yoga studio and be like, oh man, these guys have got a ton of members, like they're absolutely killing it. And then you realize that only 25% of that list is actually active and paying. And I was like, oh, whoa, that's not doing too good. And then the other side of it, super scary. As I said, I'm like, you knew this and you chose to represent it because like your income in the P&L and your cash flow report didn't match what you had written in the document, the information sheet with this business. And I questioned her on it. And that didn't go well. I backfooted her. I didn't mean to, but I was kind of naive here. I was trying to understand her, what was going on, and she took it the wrong way and like got very, very defensive of the business. And I don't think she would have sold me the business even after that. Lesson learned right there. Another little nugget of gold. Don't offend the person you're trying to buy a business off. But I was like, oh wow, this is like, in her mind, she had the most amazing business that she'd put years of blood, sweat, and tears in, and the valuation she was giving it was correct. But in my mind, this is a business that wasn't profitable at all, with a horrible lease agreement, an inactive member list, and someone that really had no idea what they're doing. This is a horrible asset, needs a lot of work. And it was just really, really interesting, that perspective. And that story repeated itself into all these yoga studios. And what kind of ended up happening is like, I was incredibly scarred from this experience. And I actually didn't buy a yoga studio at all because I quickly realized that I was out of my depth here. Like just reading Billionaire in Training by Brad Sugars wasn't going to be enough for me to be great at due diligence or have the team of people around me so that I could start making these types of acquisitions. So that was my first big lesson in due diligence and just like how seriously you need to treat it because of the way or how much is up for interpretation and like just by tweaking a few things, how someone can make a business look like it's doing so much better than it really is.
And isn't that scary to see? Like we noticed it's pretty scary just by them having, with the books, so many members of the council, but selling it as though they've still got them kind of active. That's scary, but in itself, how scary is it that you're buying a business or particularly a yoga business, somebody who is, I would dare say, quite spiritual, and is selling it in a way that half of the people or only 25% of the clients are actually active, and them being conscious of that? Like the trust there can certainly be lost, especially when you go through and you've been through how many businesses, Charlie? Like that's a scary thing to note as well.
Yeah, totally. And you nailed it. This is actually one of the things that turned me off this space altogether, or this idea. I'd still go into this space. I definitely love this space. But the nature of the people that were running these businesses were mostly people that loved yoga, loved teaching yoga, fantastic technicians, and terrible business owners. And like, that's okay, but I had to recognize that if I was buying one of those studios, I was really kind of buying someone's job and turning it into a business for myself.
Certainly. And what you mentioned there is these guys are fantastic technicians, but not great business owners. And that's a term that I definitely know that you got from Michael Gerber. If any of you guys have heard of Michael Gerber, read more of his stuff, or if you haven't, go away and look at Michael Gerber, the E-Myth, and that's really good. I presume you probably got that from there, Charlie. But another thing that I wanted to pick up on, and I will tell a story that I have for you guys as well. But another thing that I picked up on is your little golden nugget that you said, don't offend the seller. And I want to explain why to not offend the seller. And this is something that I teach my clients. So some real gold in here as well is that when you go away and buy a business, you normally, especially in online business, you want to have a bit of a training period, and you negotiate a training period where the seller teaches you basically how to run the business and how to maintain the business or even grow it, right? And they give you as much value as possible. Now, if you offend the seller and they sell it to you and they're not very happy, they're just going to grab your money and bail. But what I teach people to have a really good relationship with the seller and not offend them at all.
Well, I wish I had listened to someone like you, Jared. I really do. Well, there's layers to that as well. Like, that's a fantastic point, and I agree with that 100%. But there's also some other things, is that when someone sells a business, they actually care about the business and they want it to go on. So if they perceive you as, like, let's say this person perceived me as an asshole, they wouldn't want to sell me the business because they wouldn't want that business to be in my possession. They wouldn't want to let that asshole have it, so to speak.
Certainly agree.
And then even as for negotiating leverage, is that, if I had handled that situation better, I was just in shock. I handled it poorly because I was baffled by what was going on. But if I'd have handled that better, I probably could have negotiated a much better deal or terms, or got this person to see my point of view much more easily.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but that's the thing. That's why we're telling these stories, because everybody else that's listening can learn from our mistakes, and it's a really good thing too. And I love listening to what you say, in the sense that people want to sell their businesses, just like it's kind of like their baby, right? And they don't want to just give it to anybody to go away and destroy. So I was actually recording a case study with one of my clients who's looked at so many businesses last year, and he just bought his first one. Super pumped and really excited for him. He's making $3,000 a month now from his first business. And I asked him a question. I said, how did you go speaking to the sellers? Did you notice that a lot of them didn't want to sell their business to just anyone? And he said, oh yeah, a lot of them were like really skeptical of me, just as skeptical as I was of them, because they wanted to ensure that I could be somebody that could take their business or take their baby and actually grow it and actually build it into something that it can be better. So I certainly agree with you on the sense that people are very worried about who they're going to sell their business to. That's for sure.
I reckon we could do a whole podcast episode just on that topic alone. And maybe we'll even come back to it. I've got some stories on that as well. But I'm dying to know one of your stories, Jared. Like, lay it down.
Yeah, awesome. So I bought my first business, and then I thought, all right, cool, I'm going to go away and buy another one. I'm going to buy a bigger one. And my idea was just to go all out. And I thought, all right, if I want to replace my income and make an absolute awesome living, I need to go bigger, right? I'd learned enough from my first business. I'm like, my ego was swelling as well, Charlie. And I went and thought,
excellent.
I've got this, right? I've got this. I'm going to go away and buy a beast, an absolute awesome business. And I was on Flipper, and I looked at this business for sale, and it was a guy who had like a lot of experience in marketing and sales. And I was like, all right, this guy's awesome. He knows how to build a business. Now, with that, I went and did a whole lot of research and due diligence on the business, and I was like, all right, maybe I might be a little bit out of my depth. I was thinking, I'm going to get some finance for this business. It was like a couple of $100,000 business. And my first business was way less than that, right? It was in the tens of thousands of dollars. And so I was like, all right, let me just get somebody to, help me ask a few extra questions just to double check a few things. And so I went away and did that. And I think it was somebody from the States, and they came back and they looked at the business just briefly, and they came back to me and said, ask these certain questions. And they were questions the same as you, based around the finances and like just making the books, like cooking the books a little bit and making them look really, really good. And I forget what the exact questions were because it was a while ago now. And I pretty much had, I was ready to go away and get the finance. I was all signed up, ready to go and put that into an escrow account to go away and start the migration of the business. And I asked him a few questions, and I have the sense that he knew exactly what I was talking about. I have the sense that he knew that I was on to him about something, and nothing, crickets. I didn't hear back from him at all. And I think he got cold feet, realizing that I knew what he was up to in trying to sell a business that wasn't actually valued at the amount that he was selling it at. And my lesson there is that to always have somebody help you, somebody that's done this many times before, especially if you're going to make an investment the size that you've never made before. And that was a very scary thing for me because I was so close, Charlie, like a couple of $100,000 in finance and buying something that it could have just put me backwards for years, like maybe even a decade to come.
Oh, I love that story because I think you just nailed something so important when it comes to due diligence. Is that, it's so easy to overlook things yourself, even when you are experienced. And I have checklists and processes and tools and all kinds of things, and I still am confident we can miss things. So in that is I think you've nailed something, and one of the reasons I love your community so much is you've got that extra set of eyes or people you can turn to, and often they just see something that you didn't, and it can make all the difference, like in this story here.
Yeah. For sure. And that's that's really, really important is to, you can sell yourself. This is what I tell people is that, especially my clients, is that you can get really excited about a business and you sell yourself into it. And then when you sell yourself into something, you've got so many blind spots. And I think it was last year or the year before, I heard from not even a person that was buying businesses, but somebody that was like a CEO of a business. And I spoke to him and he said, Jared, what you need to do is you need to sell yourself out of the investment. And if you can't sell yourself out of the investment, you have to invest. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, that goes for everything, not just online businesses and any sort of program I do, anything that I invest in. If I can't sell myself out of it, I have to invest it. And that's a really important thing to note is that when we do get excited, we don't have another set of eyes to sort of help out, and we can just sell ourselves into it. And then, with my community is that people can ask questions into the group as long as it's not breaching an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. And then it's not just me who's answering them, although I bought so many businesses and have all that experience, but there's also guys in the group as well that have a bit of experience, and especially through what we do. So it really is good to not just have one, but many sort of sets of eyes to help you for sure. So that's a really good pickup, Charlie.
Yeah, definitely. I love that.
So tell me, I mean, we could just tell so many stories. So what else have you got for us? Just give us some juicy ones. I mean, that yoga one is that had so many layers to it. What else have you got that's an interesting due diligence story that we should be looking out for?
Well, it's something I put a post up. I mean, actually, I won't just do that because not everyone will see the post. But I'll say that on the weekend, I put a post on Facebook saying that sometimes when you're in this game of buying and selling businesses, what you should really celebrate is not getting into a bad deal. Like actually not making a move is sometimes the best move to make. And obviously making a deal is very exciting. And there's no financial reward for saying no to a deal. But if you get into a bad deal or you get caught into something, like there's heavy repercussions. And you just referenced this in saying, if you'd have taken up that deal that was, hundreds of thousands of dollars, it has the potential to put you back 5 years. And I think every deal has that potential. It really, really does.
Yeah, for sure. Like I don't know if you saw my comment. I commented back, and my comment was just a quote from Donald Trump, and I say this often as well, is that Donald Trump, whether you like him, love him, hate him, despise him, he has a really good quote that goes, sometimes the best investments are the ones we never make.
Totally. And I can understand it in this context.
Yeah, that was definitely the best investment that I've never made. Yeah. So one of the things I particularly like to do, so Charlie's sweet spot is like I have a fantastic tech team. Okay, so I've got a team of 5 that just work on my web projects, and like they're very talented. They can do fantastic design and build great websites or rebuild great websites, very good at content, very good at link building. So I've got that as an asset. Like that's a sweet spot for Charlie. So often what I'm looking for in a business is I'm looking for something that needs renovating. So often, like for me, I'm really happy to like look at the financials of a website and they're okay, and then look at the website and nearly have a heart attack. That's almost good for me. Yeah.
Like if I'm like, damn, if it's doing this well, looking this terrible, imagine what we can do. So that's sometimes the mindset I can carry into a deal. So for this one over the weekend, I was particularly interested in this area and this business. And I got, the information and the due diligence and all that. And like it had some things I loved, like some things that were really attractive from my point of view. And then something that made this deal even more lucrative to me is that I have another website in the same niche. So for me to buy this, it's not just like buying one business that's a solo, is this business would play very well into my other business. And I'm like, I could be my own JV partner. I could sell products or do bundles from one into the other. So like the value is much higher for me. And what was the mistake? And I'll start with the mistake here, is the idea of that leverage was so exciting to me, it actually made me a little bit blind. Like I loved the idea of like, well, we're going to make so much on the back end of this because of like how the two sites are going to play into each other that almost everything else doesn't matter. And I'm going through it and like, I'm making this list of things that need fixing. And, number one was like the site needs to be rebuilt. Like it is old, it looks terrible on mobile. Like, all right. The second part was the URL structures and a whole bunch of things from there. And I'm making this list, and then still there's a side of me just going, no, it's fine. Like like that's easy. Like no worries, we can fix that. We can fix that. And then I got to the end of my process, and I was looking at the amount of hours my team would have to invest to fix this site. And I looked at that number against the potential gain. So I looked at the potential upside, and it was the worst deal I think I've ever nearly considered. Like so close to pulling the trigger, and just like, this is a horrible investment. This is actually a horrible investment for me.
Wow. Isn't it crazy? Like, and I've done that so many times that I've looked at something and I've already sold myself into it before I've gone all the way through the due diligence, and I pulled the wool over my eyes. And this is like the massive emphasis that I mentioned to my clients, is that we want it to work so badly because we're thinking about we've got our focus on like how awesome this will be once we get everything fixed up and like once we get it running and once it's all good. And then we often consider like the downfalls of it and the real costs. And that's so cool that you went through and you worked out the real costs, Charley, as opposed to how much time and energy and money it's going to cost you in your team to get this just to work as a JV partner for yourself.
Yeah, totally. And it's those fantasies, those intoxications to what something could be because we like the topic or we love the idea or there's something about it that we're almost willing to like just get emotionally invested in all the wrong ways. So very, very dangerous. But Jared, I'm dying to ask you a couple of questions on this topic though, because like I know you've seen a lot of this stuff. So, I mean, due diligence is something that comes with what we do here. Like you have to do it. But something I'm really kind of struck by is just like, you know, why we have to do so much of it. You know, if people are being really honest with their numbers and upfront, it's like, I feel like, I don't know if you feel the same, but it's like personally, I feel like so much due diligence is required in a market that really shouldn't be. Like things should be much, much cleaner. And for that reason, I want to ask you, how much do you think people lie or manipulate when it comes to selling their business?
Wow, what a question. So there's two things, and it can be people are lying and manipulating. And I would like to see the greater good in human beings and believe that most people are ignorant to it. However, there are those people that do lie. And
we'll break that down. I just want to clarify 100%. There are people out there that are scammers trying to sell sites and manipulate data with like link farms and all kinds of shit to show insane amounts of traffic that isn't real. That's 100% legit a real thing. The second part of that is there's definitely people that fudge the numbers. They're just trying to make it look a little bit better than it is to get a sale. But then I think you nailed it. There's almost this third category of like just not aware. They don't even realize something's an issue that we can see clearly. Yeah. So I'll hand it back over to you, but I just wanted to define that clearly because I think you can agree those categories exist.
Certainly. And thank you for doing that. They have those three different categories, you know. And so let's talk about let's go from where we started as the 100%. There are people out there that scam. And I think it was your question, Charley, is like, what was it? Was it how many, like, why do we need to do so much? Why do we need to spend so much time doing due diligence? Is that right?
All right, I'll phrase this up. Is like, you know, my perception is that I believe that I have to spend way too much time on due diligence because I know there's scammers and liars out there and they're getting better and better at what they do. So if I'm not careful and check these deals, is like, I honestly believe it is reasonably easy to get caught out.
Yep.
So because of that belief, I would love from your perspective to know what percentage. So let's say, you know, zero out of, you know, from 0 to 100, if you were to go on, and I'm not going to name any brokers, so I'm just going to say on the average broker's side, what percentage of websites out there are in that category of flat out lying or manipulated, like the worst of the worst? Great
question. So you've got, and I want to, I'll tell a story after this as well. And it's relatable to my explanation. So there's two different places, right? You got marketplaces and then you got website brokers. On the marketplaces like flipper.com and exchangemarketplace.com, the percentage of the percentage of scammers on there is high. And I'm talking, so in that, out of those three categories, you got scammers, people that fudge, and then people that are ignorant to the fact, yeah? And I would say scammers are probably 60%. And
wow.
then it's a lot. It could be 50 to 60%. And then people that are fudging would be in the 20 to 30%. And then like a small amount of people are quite ignorant to the fact. And that's on marketplaces, right? I think it's a totally different ball game on brokers. So on brokers, I reckon the numbers would be lower. I reckon you're talking, and this is my opinion here.
Yeah, we have no data here.
Yeah, we have no data. Yeah, it's good, but it's a great conversation to have. I reckon there could be like 20% of scammers on brokers. I reckon there's probably about 30 to 40% fudging, maybe a bit higher. So the middle amount is a larger percentage, and then probably like 30 something percentage. And I don't know if my numbers are doing so well here, but around 30% ignorant. And I reckon there's probably like 10%ish, and these are very round numbers because I'm not counting up into the hundreds, but around the 10%ish that are, you know, full legit, and they know everything, and are all across probably 5%, right? And the reason I want to tell you that a lot of people are ignorant is, so you got the scammers, you got the fudges, and then you got the ignorant. Now I reckon with the people that are ignorant, I reckon they don't know because they're selling their business because they don't know what is going on. And there's that bucket, right? You got a bucket and they got all these holes, and they don't know where those holes are in that bucket, and they don't know how to repair them so they can scale the business to a high level. And they've probably tried that before, and they don't know how to like detect those leaks. So they want to sell their business while they can before those holes get bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And that's what I believe most of the ignorant people, well, I'm not saying that, and same with me, right? There's still gaps and stuff in my business and everybody's business that we can be a little bit ignorant too. But I think that's why people that are selling their businesses, that's the cause of the sale. Mostly.
Yeah, ignorance probably not the right word, and I don't mean it like that. I'll just say there's no malice intent. Like there might be something wrong, yes, but they're just not aware of it. Like they're
conscious.
Not intentionally doing it.
Yeah, unconscious. Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty alarming numbers, isn't it, Charlie?
I tend to agree. Massively. It's so funny. Like, I mean, some of them I see and I'm just like, are you honestly like even trying this? And I'll give you a really good example. I came across one that was like a dating website, and I chucked the URL into Ahrefs, and I could see that 99.9% of the traffic was from India. And I was like, okay, that doesn't look legit at all. And yeah, it's totally someone manipulating traffic or a ClickBank or whatever it is from there to try and make it look better than it is. And the other side of it is like, you know, all of a sudden, last 30 days, extreme amount of backlinks. And I'm like, all right, this is not looking the best. One of the ones I love, though, this is one of my favorite ones I look out for, is when someone happily puts up a declining site or business. It's like, hey, I've dropped the ball. You can clearly see in the last 6 months, I haven't given this any time or attention. It used to be good, but I've been busy on other businesses. Like, that is something I love to see, because I can go, all right, they know what they're doing hasn't been great.
Yeah, and there are so many of those businesses out there for sale that people have built it up and started making money, and then all that's happened is it's not so much of the business's, you know, fault or the niche or the market. It's just they've stopped putting as much focus into that business, and it needs a set of, or a fresh injection of energy, which could be from a new owner for sure. And to add to that as well, Charlie, like we're talking like it takes, and you said it before, it takes a lot of time to do due diligence and research, and it does, right? Even when you do start getting really, really good. Now, I want to mention something that a lot of my clients know is that the more due diligence and research that you do, the better you get at quickly analyzing businesses and seeing whether it's worth you taking further time to invest in doing heavier due diligence. So for me, I can scroll through and go, yes, 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 or, you know, I can go for weeks and going, nah, nothing worth my time looking deeper into until it pops up to my radar, which something intrigues me, because I've looked at so many businesses as well. So yeah, you can spend a lot of time doing it, but you can get better at choosing where you do spend your time and in what sort of businesses you do due diligence on. Sorry, that's a tongue twister there.
Totally. I mean, I have to ask, we can't leave that there. Like, I mean, I won't ask you to give it away, but it's like, what's the first or the most important couple of things you like to look at with due diligence? Because I've got my hot favorites. I'll let you go first, though, and then I'll share mine.
Yeah, so the quickest one that I look at is like the multiple. So I look at the multiple and I go, all right, so is it, if I'm looking at it, somebody's selling a business for just say 100 grand, right? Or let's say 30 grand, and it's making 5 grand a month net profit. I'm like, scam. Straight away, I'm like, scam. I just like, okay, cool, that's fine. Next, like, it doesn't even, like, I don't even get angry at it. Like, I used to go, oh, why is this person doing this? Like, it's so annoying. Don't post it up for sale. And it's there. It's just like another road sign that I've just got to drive past. And so that's one really, really big thing. Another really big thing is I kind of look at the workload and work out how many hours they're telling me it's going to take. And then we'll look at the workload and go, all right, what sort of work is required? And for me, I go, can I do that work myself when I was first starting? And how would I do that work myself? But now I look at it and go like, all right, if I'm going to buy a business, how could I buy a business that a team member could do that for? And how much would it cost them? And then how much would that take out of the overall profit of the business? So that's my first two. And then the third one is looking at the traffic and the social media and the website. Like, so there's a lot there actually. So the visuals of the website, what work needs to be done to make it look good. And, like not just look good to the eye, but also convert, conversion rate optimization. And then if that looks good, then I'll scan through the traffic and I won't do any financial due diligence at all until I'm like, all right, I'm going to get Google Analytics and I'm going to go get financial due diligence and do that. So the first three would be the multiple, the work that's required, and just the visual appeal. What would yours be?
Great answer, Jared. I love that. And
Thanks.
I'm not doing any of them, so I'm going to add them in.
It's just a quick scan. It's just I just look at it and it's like it can just say yes or no. And because there's so many, I look at so many from clients that like will show them to me, or I have a look and post them up, in the group sometimes for sale. And I think you've seen some of my posts on things that what I would do, why I would stay away, why I would like dig into this deeper and stuff like that. And I psychoanalyze them that way. And I've just gotten really good because it's had to be done for time wise,
Yeah, I totally agree. I really, really do. So, I mean, I'll go through mine now because mine's almost, I'll put it through there as like, first off is niche and business model. So that's probably 1 and 2. But for me, like I have spaces where I already have existing knowledge. So I'm really happy when I can apply leverage from another deal. I don't like going into areas where I've never been before. And that's just because enhanced risk, in all honesty. Yep. It's like if you already know how to win in an area, just keep winning in an area. And then that applies to business model as well. Like I'm heavily biased towards advertising and affiliate, and I'm not so much into e-commerce. I would always prefer an advertising model over an e-commerce model if I get the choice. So that's my like straight filter, and that eliminates a lot of deals for me right away. And then after that is the Ahrefs check. So like if I can see consistency in Ahrefs, which is, I mean, go to ahrefs.com and check out the SEO tool and all the rest. But what I'm looking at is basically, I'm not even looking for like extremely good. I'm just looking for like anything that looks unnatural. So I'm looking to see that if I put this deal in, that it doesn't look like someone's just bought it a crap ton of links in the last month or done something which looks shady. And if I see those three and I'm more happy across that, then I'm happy to do the deeper work. But if it doesn't pass that test, then I'm like, not worth my time. I'm not even going to interact or get Google into Analytics or anything like that.
Yeah. And Ahref is such an awesome tool. And there's a lot of those sort of free tools. The paid version is obviously way better. And I want to touch on something you just said, that you look at the business sort of model or the niche and model, right? So for me, I'm normally looking at businesses that aren't my type of model or something that I would exactly go for, because I'm looking at them for clients, right? But for me, that's why I've missed out the model. So for anybody that is a beginner, certainly have a model that isn't something that you already know, but something more so that you understand. Like if you understand affiliate and you understand drop shipping, have those two that are only types of businesses you'll start doing due diligence on, rather than an advertising one or a SaaS type of business. So that's certainly a really, really good tip, Charlie. So thank you for that.
No, more than welcome. I think it's really interesting, like asking that question to other people in this space, because it's always so different. As you can see, like ours were completely different, but still so valuable. They both hold weight. Exactly.
And what everybody that's listening to this can sort of mash them together and see what works for them. And I want to tell another story, and I want to hear another story from you. I know we're getting deeper into this, which is really good. But I've got a story about one of the best investments that I've ever made. And it's not a bad story. It's kind of ended up like a good story. And with it, I looked at this business and I found it on Flipper, and it was listed on another broker. And I didn't know it was listed on another broker until, we kind of worked out like a deal on Flipper, and they said, hey, I want to sell it through Flipper, not the other broker. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't even know it existed on the other broker. But anyhow, I looked at this business and it was so appealing. The brand was really good, and it seemed like it was making good money. And it was, orders were coming through, and they had minimized and downsized it. It was more of a bricks and mortar type businesses. And then it's sort of moved on to the online platform, and I could see so many growth opportunities with it, and it already had a team. And I looked at it and I was like, I really wanted to buy this business. And I just didn't want to go away and buy it just because I really liked it. I wanted to buy it because it was a good investment. And the trickiest thing was the due diligence, the financial due diligence. And the reason being is because there was numbers that were in Aussie dollars and numbers that were in a different currency. And I really struggled to convert the currency and do good due diligence on it. So I went to my dad and I said, Dad, help me. I want to buy this one. It's really good. And whenever I go to my dad for business advice or help, it's really good. Dad's my devil's advocate, and he tells me what not to do. And I went to him and he had a look at it. He's like, Jared, I can't make sense of it. I can't make sense of it at all. And what I did was I weighed up the math, and I asked myself, am I prepared to take this risk and lose X amount, or not make X amount for X amount of time, for the possibility of achieving this return on investment? And the answer was yes. And so because the numbers weren't so, how do you say it, like congruent, but there was a certain trend there, but it wasn't very, very specific. It was kind of like a little bit of a risk in not knowing every single thing or every single cent down to the T. And my dad said to me, Jared, whatever you do not buy this business. And I bought it.
I love this story already. It's got dad test, and then you asked for his advice, and then just flat out went against him.
Exactly. And I was like, I weighed up the risk, and I already said it was a worthy risk. And it wasn't so much of a like, I say risk, probably is the worst word to use, but I was prepared to take on what could have happened to achieve what was going to happen, that I had so much more certainty in happening. And the thing was that, yes, due diligence is very time consuming. And it took me, I did due diligence on this business for a month, guys. Like a whole month, Charlie. That's crazy, right? And this is a really cool thing to understand, is that nobody wanted to touch this business because they couldn't understand the financials themselves. And so for me, knowing that, I was allowed to take a little bit more time to really weigh up whether it was going to be a worthy investment. And so I went away and I bought the business, and it was one of the best. I achieved the best return on my investment that I've ever achieved before, right? Like I got a 700% return on my investment in just 100% return on my investment, in just 7 months. And that could be a stroke of luck, but it's certainly, I went away and I just made a whole bunch of orders, a whole bunch of money, and I got my money back, straight away. And that was because it was the right time of year with the right business. And I took that sort of plunge, and that cost benefit analysis. Is it worth me not having this to possibly have this sort of return in X amount of time? And yeah, that was, my lesson from that is that you can take your time on due diligence as long as there's not so many people that are competing with you to buy the business, and you can really weigh up your options, and you may come away with a really, really good deal.
I love that story. Now, the most important question, did you tell your dad about this?
Yes. He shook his head and he's just like, oh, but I've done so many crazy things in my life, and my parents have just shook their head and supported me anyway. So I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, Dad and I sort of laugh about it now. He's probably listening and laughing, but Dad's the best at being a devil's advocate, and in lots of business decisions that I make, I always go to him, and he really brings me back to ground. So if you got somebody that's on your side with that, it's awesome to have, but also take their opinion and have it with a few grains of salt to really make your own opinion from it as well.
I think it's so valuable to have people like that in your life. And it may, a father, a friend, a family member, like it doesn't really matter who it is, but I think those types of relationships, it is so valuable.
Yeah, so valuable, because if I had have just gone away and bought it without speaking to my dad or him helping me with a bit of financial due diligence, there would have been some things that I hadn't foreseen coming up in the business at all. And it was really important to have that. So yeah, you're right, Charlie. Those relationships are very valuable, even if they're not Dad is a positive person, but he just really, it's a father figure, right? Like your mum and your dad and people that are around you, they want to protect you. So they want to kind of just make sure nothing bad's going to happen. And it's good because they look at it from a different way. Whereas I'm so I can be head in the clouds at the time, right? I'm such a hare where I go away and get things done and I forget to look at the ground and sometimes trip over or fall off the mountain when I'm running up it,
Totally. Happens. It definitely happens.
So Charlie, what did you take away from that? And then do you have another juicy story of yours?
Do you know what? It really reminded me of a story of my own. It's like my most successful deal is the one I did I'll put it out there. What I find interesting, I'm a very conservative person. I'm very risk adverse. And if you were to look at my entrepreneurial journey, I'm like this, I'm the tortoise, not the hare. I'm just slow and steady. Every year I get gains and consistency. My P&L statement for my companies and myself is probably the most boring one you'll ever see, because it's just slow and consistent. There's no crazy, $1 million in a month and then lost $500,000 the next month or anything like that. And that's something I really strive for, is consistency. And I build my businesses with moat tactics, which makes them very defensible. So we get through all kinds of things.
Love it.
But what's interesting is my most successful deal was done with incredibly poor due diligence.
Wow.
So it's fascinating that the one your dad said don't do and you still did it, and the one that, the most important area, in my opinion, the financials, and we couldn't get exacts due to currency.
Yeah.
And you were still willing to wear that. And for that to go so well is you were, evaluating risk extremely well, in my opinion. For it to turn out, hindsight, we can say that, but if it blew up, obviously we'd call it a different story.
Yeah.
But I'll go straight there, because I think this is already getting to a longer podcast, and I don't want to put the listeners to sleep. Although I wonder if some are curious.
I dare say they are.
Well, the deal I got into with the least amount of due diligence was actually Outsourcing Angel. So it's really funny because I had a marketing agency prior to co-founding that company with Lynn Padetti. And Lynn and me met at a networking event, like a mastermind conference event thing. And we had a friend in common. So we both knew someone between us, but we didn't know each other before that. And there was just something special about Lynn. Like this person, she's got this like amazing energy, right? It's intoxicating. And I was just fascinated by her. Like she was someone that was just like, I could just tell she like oozed success. And I was like, she's just going to be a winner. I was so certain of it that is how I ended up in business with her. Like there was so much lack of good thinking, planning, looking at the numbers. Like it became, I was just so into it and I believed in her so much. I knew she was going to be successful that I was like, I want to be on board with this. To the point where it's like I had a marketing company at the time that was getting close. You know, at the time I met her, it was like close to 7 figures, maybe a little bit more than 7 figures we're at. Like we broke 7 figures while Outsourcing Angel was running. But to the point where it's like I closed that marketing company to be in Outsourcing Angels even more and grow that because I saw that as the better opportunity.
Wow. It's so good, like not meeting people that you can just sense that they've got something, and then you putting so much like faith and trust in them, and without doing the due diligence, you just have this feeling. And this is a cool thing that we might have to touch on another time, but I definitely ask people and clients, should I say, when they're about to purchase a business, is like, let's get out of our head. Let's not get so analytical, and let's like just don't think about it. Just feel it. Like, how does this actually feel for you? And then they can make a pretty awesome and accurate decision just by their feeling. And I think that's so cool, is that you went from, especially, you know, how you are with your consistent growth. And I know that you can be quite analytical in looking at, you know, finances and stuff like that. And that's such a good trait to have as an investor. But this time you really went to how you felt about that person and went with it. And it's turned out to be the best thing. Like, it's so awesome. And I'm so stoked for you that that's happened.
Oh, well, thanks, man. But it's interesting even then, because if I'd have been analytical in that moment, I shouldn't have done it. I think I stopped myself from being analytical because I knew I'd find something I didn't want.
But what analytics would have you had? Like,
Lynn's track record, her envisionment for the future of the business, the business model forecast. Like, there's a lot of things in the plan that could have been used much more strongly. So it's like, obviously buying an existing business, it's easier to be, it's got a history. Like, it's easy to look at a history. Yeah. But when you're investing, which is what I was doing, I was investing in a future idea, right? You can definitely quantify and do a whole bunch of market research and all the rest. So, you know, in this example, the one thing that was in the favor of it was the business was in trend. Like, VAs and outsourcing was growing.
Yeah, now, massively in trend.
Yeah, but then there's the other side of it, of like, you look at what parties bring to the table. So for instance, in this example is like, you know, if I'm on board, I'm bringing 5 years of digital agency experience, and I'd already spent, you know, like 3 or 4 mil on ads at that point.
Yeah.
So like, have me on that team, like you'd give it a positive bet. Lynn had a ton of experience with VAs already. She'd already gotten me team members for my agency, just as a little side hustle. So there was all these things going on where it's like, you could definitely dig into that data to decide if it was a good deal or not, even on a new venture.
Yeah, such an awesome win. And, you know, we've gone through so much in this episode, from like stories where we gathered around the campfire and had some pretty severe near losses, and then some awesome due diligence. Like, I thought we were just going to talk about, where we've just come out unscathed without dying, Charlie, on our approach to buying businesses. But we went to the positive, and we went to like some things we have done due diligence on, and have actually worked out really, really well. And I think that's so cool for everybody listening. And so I'm going to wrap up this episode, but Charlie, where can we find out more about you?
Yeah, so look, if anyone wants to find more about me, first thing you should do is just follow Jared, because I'm just stalking Jared. So anywhere Jared is, you normally find me. So one of your communities or wherever this podcast is, if you put in a question, I'm sure I'll get it. The second part is, if you want to find me online, it's just charleyvalher.com, and all my projects are listed on my personal page.
Yeah, awesome. And I got links to a lot of Charlie's stuff. So thank you so much for the show, Charlie. I had an awesome time chatting with you. So many golden nuggets. And that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, everybody. And please go away, like and subscribe, and we'll speak to you on the next one.